We are truly proud that the law office's attorney, Carmen Giordano, will lead tonight's presentation. He has a number of special guests with him, and I'll allow him to introduce them. But that will be our special segment tonight.
Let's break it down into a couple areas. There's private video, and then there's government surveillance. Those are the two broad areas that you have to keep in mind. When you have private video, which are cell phones, perhaps the cameras that are all around on private buildings, surveillance cameras, private drones, those are examples of private video surveillance. There are no constitutional issues involved, obviously, with private video surveillance because there's no state action. So when there's no government action, then you don't have a question of whether or not that video surveillance is constitutional or it's an invasion of our privacy. However, there are some laws that apply to private video. And when you want to videotape something as a private individual, that you should keep in mind. In New York, we have Article 250 of the Penal Law. And essentially, Article 250 says that you cannot videotape somebody in a private place where they have a reasonable expectation of privacy. Certainly a bathroom, certainly the privacy of your own home, a dressing room. Along with Article 250, there's a provision of the General Business Law of New York State. It makes illegal videotaping in a dressing room, a shower, no two-way mirrors in the department store dressing room. So there are certain things that you got to keep in mind as private individuals if you're videotaping. Do not videotape in an area where someone has a reasonable expectation of privacy. That's what you got to keep in mind. Let's talk about your cell phone cameras. I want to give you some rules distilled from the law, and there are some generalizations because the laws do vary from state to state. But some rules that you should keep in mind when you use your cell phone. All of us have seen in the news, whether it's Eric Garner, whether it's Cleveland or Baltimore or Missouri, we see the effects of the video. We see the evidence that video gives us from individuals who utilize their cell phones and take it upon themselves to videotape with their cell phones. Rule number 1. You can videotape anything that is in plain view in a public space under the law. That means you can videotape police officers. You can videotape police officers under the law who are arresting somebody. You can videotape police officers who seem to be acting a little roughly toward somebody. Legally, you are allowed to do that under the law. If it's private property, it's a little bit different. There are other rules, as we said, with respect to private property where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy. Now, there have been some states, Illinois and Massachusetts, that have enacted legislation to ban people from videotaping police action. And those laws have been found unconstitutional. Some states around the country do not allow people to secretly videotape the police. It has to be done in the open. But otherwise, you're allowed to videotape the police. This is rule number 2. Generally, the police cannot legally confiscate or demand to view your video without a warrant, and they're never supposed to delete images. Okay, so that's the law. They cannot confiscate your video. Number 3, if you are videotaping, the law permits the police to stop you or prevent you from interfering with what they're doing. Keep a distance. Don't harangue them, don't yell at them. As long as you keep a nice, safe distance from them, you're not interfering. But when you start getting a little too close, it may constitute interfering. But otherwise, as long as you don't interfere, you can videotape. Okay? Number 4, if the police do detain you because you are videotaping, the right question to ask them is, am I free to go? Are you arresting me? Am I free to go? And unless the police officer tells you you are not free to go, and if you're not free to go, that means you committed a crime. What's the crime that you committed? Videotaping is not a crime, okay? So you ask the police officer, am I free to go? And you tell the police officer, I am exercising my constitutional right to videotape. And as long as you keep your distance, you have the law on your side. Now, we know sometimes what actually happens does not follow the law. And I can't tell you what to do other than to be polite, keep your distance. You don't have to kowtow in any fashion, but you should be wise in those circumstances, because as soon as you push that button to record, you involve yourself in the situation. So you have to understand what the consequences could be. But that's what the law is. Has anybody seen those big white boxes on the intersections and you see them around the city? Those are called Argus cameras. So we have a network of surveillance. We have technology that's increasing every day, advancing. We have magnification. We could pick up what's written on a cigarette pack 400 yards away. We have pan and tilt technology, databases of digital information. We have biometrics now with facial recognition. There are cameras that actually can take images of people, plug it into automatically, stream it into a computer, and figure out maybe that's somebody of interest. Since 911, we've had a great increase in cameras around our city. We have drones. The police commissioner had been talking about using drones. So when we have government surveillance, then we have constitutional implications. Then we're talking about our privacy, our rights of privacy, and on a constitutional level, under the Fourth Amendment mainly, and on occasion under the 14th Amendment. We have strong rights of privacy. When the technology increases and the government has the opportunity to get more deeply involved in our lives and our personal lives, we want accountability. But who is the government supposed to work for? They're supposed to work for us. They're not supposed to be against us. The surveillance is supposed to be working for us, to protect us. So when it begins to get too intrusive and it's abused, then we have a problem. We need checks and balances. Basically, for video evidence to be offered into evidence in a court of law, and I can't tell you how many times in our law office, Giordano Law Offices, video evidence is a total game changer in a very difficult case. You have people saying one thing, and the video proves quite the opposite. But the two ways that video can come into evidence. One is if there's an individual who operated the camera and can lay a foundation, is what lawyers say, can authenticate that video, can establish how that video was recorded, when it was recorded, and provide a evidentiary foundation. The other way is just if someone looks at the video and says, yeah, that video is how it went down. I was there, I saw it happen, and that video is a fair and accurate representation of what occurred, what's depicted in there. If anything happens where there may be video, please contact a lawyer immediately if it's something of legal significance, because that video is not going to be there for that long. And on that note, I want to introduce Detective Grimes. Again, I feel very honored to call Detective Grimes my friend, my brother. He's one of the good guys. Let's listen to what he has to say.